Another example of something which is very worrisome for me, and the side effects of it have been very apparent. Some people have made the assertion that vaccinations are the cause of autism. There is no evidence for this at all, nothing. In fact, if anything, it's the complete opposite. And yet there are people who believe this disinformation. And the consequence of that is that they don't have their children vaccinated, and the children catch measles, and they spread measles around, which we haven't had in the U.S. for decades. Suddenly now we have epidemics. And so that's utterly irresponsible. And the question then is, what should you do about it? The normal reaction to this is, well, more information should help, except that we're now inundated by information and we're struggling to decide which information should we reject and which information should we accept, and how can we tell? It doesn't work to do kind of polling of the population to see who believes this and who believes that. The reason that doesn't work is that now we have these things called bots. They're programs that pretend to be people. And it's getting easier and easier to make a program pretend to be a person. In fact, let me try this on you. You remember what the Turing Test was? He had several variations, but the basic idea was a human being is interrogating a computer and another human being. And just with these written exchanges, the human is trying to figure out which one is the computer and which one is the human. And if the computer succeeds in fooling the person into thinking that it's a human being, then the computer has passed the Turing test. So that was Turing's basic test. You remember a movie was made called The Imitation Game, which was about that test. I have Turing Test 2, which I've just made up. I'm a computer, and I'm interrogating a computer and a human being. And on the basis of my exchanges, remember, I'm just a program, on the basis of my exchanges, I'm trying to figure out, is this a computer or is this a human? And so remember that the computer is seeing these exchanges through the filter of protocols on the internet. And it doesn't have the same facility that even a human being has to get subtleties and things like that. To make matters worse, when we try to make the distinction between a human and a computer in this online environment, we offer these challenges like CAPTCHAs. Remember, it's a long acronym, but basically it's a test that's supposed to figure out whether the thing on the other side is a human or a computer. And so you know how annoying those tests are. I mean, sometimes it'll be an array of pictures, and they'll say, click on all the pictures that have a car in them. You know, and you look at this thing and you think, well, does that look like a tailpipe of a car or not? And does that count or not? And then when you fail the test, you get very angry, and you do it twice, and then you get more angry, and then you throw your computer through the window. So we have not done a very good job. And so now coming back to the key question, the fact that we have trouble telling the difference between a human and a computer means that if we're polling a system and some computers are pretending to be people, they can be programmed to take whatever position somebody wants them to take. And so we get disinformation spreading through the system, looking as if it is a widely held view, even though it's only held by a few people plus a whole bunch of bots. So we can't use our normal tools to filter. So guess what? We're challenged, we're privileged to have access to all this information. Google is proud to run a search engine to help you find it, but we have a problem as users to figure out, of all the information we found, what should we reject? So what do we have in our hands to deal with this? We have something called wetware. And so our brains have to be trained to think critically about what we're seeing and hearing. This is not the first time you've heard me say this. So I'm a big fan of critical thinking. And that's the core of the scientific method when you think about it. So critical thinking says, oh, here's an assertion. Is there any evidence that backs up the assertion? Like the Larry Sumner question you asked. Could I get some water? Or vodka, or whatever. So we have to ask questions like, where did the information come from? Is there corroborating evidence? Who put this up there? Are they trying to get me to believe something that I don't want to believe? I need to tease my way through that. I need to find resources to validate the data, and it's okay. So I think we have to work on that, and I think companies like mine need to work on helping people find useful information to figure out what is or isn't reasonable. Now, there is one other problem. This is the problem that the scientists have. Let's imagine that 10 years ago, you came to me, I'll pretend I'm a scientist, and you've come to me and you said, what should I do? And I say, well, you should do X for some value of X. And so you thank me very much because I have this expertise, and so you take my advice. And 10 years later, you come back and you say, well, I've been following your advice, but what do you think about it now? And I say to you, well, I've had 10 years to study this problem, and I've come to the conclusion that you should not do X, you should do Y for some value of Y. And you look at me. Now, some people will say, oh, thank you for the benefit of the extra 10 years of expertise. But some people will say, so you lied to me 10 years ago. And scientists will say, no, I didn't lie to you. I told you to the best of my ability what my theory was and what research I had done to support the theory. And 10 years later, I've discovered that Y is more accurate than X was. But there are some people who will say, you lied to me, and then they say they won't accept Y either because you lied about X, so why should they believe you about Y? This is a terrible dilemma for scientists, because a good scientist accepts the possibility that his favorite theory, or her favorite theory, is wrong. It just looked good until you were able to measure something better, and then it tells you that the theory didn't work, and this new measurement tells you you need a new theory. So scientists are willing to give up their favorite theories. Some aren't. I mean, some will cling to them, forever. But most good scientists are prepared for that. But most people are not, because they imagine that science means truth. And, any good scientist will tell you, at best, science is the best approximation we have to the truth right now. But getting that concept into people's heads and getting them to use that for critical thinking, that's not so easy, which is why I think we should be teaching young people, children, how to think critically, so by the time they grow up, they can distinguish, or at least try to distinguish, good quality and bad quality information. And by the way, this is important not just for the internet. Movies, radio, television, your friends and your parents are all potential sources of bad information. That latter point, by the way, causes trouble. When I try to encourage teachers to teach children how to think critically, and the kids learn how to do that, and then they come home and they start asking, pointed questions about their parents' opinions. Some of the parents don't like that. And so they don't like the idea of critical thinking because their kids have come home and criticized them. Well, that's sociology for you.